Hey everybody, just wanted to give you a quick heads up. We're going to get started here at about 6:45, so enjoy the food, grab yourself another drink. Just so you know, the bathrooms are out past the elevators on the other side, and if you need to log on to the Wi-Fi, you can use Capital Factory Guest. So we'll be with you in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Please feel free to keep eating and talking and drinking. My name is Zach Walker, and this is Sean Heritage, and we are from the Defense Innovation Unit, formerly Defense Innovation Unit Experimental. And we are here to talk tonight a bit about how we have been working with various parts of the military and startups and other organizations to try to unleash artificial intelligence here in the great state of Texas. So for those of you that are not familiar with DIU, we are a Department of Defense organization. We've been around since 2015, and our mission is to ensure that our military has access to cutting-edge commercial innovation to help protect and prepare our military for the challenges that they face. Since starting in 2015, we've done about 75 different projects, and we moved around $250 million of non-dilutive capital to startups and other companies. And it's not just startups. We've worked with traditional defense players, major corporations. The big thing for us is we think that everyone has a role to play in our national defense. And through organizations like DIU, we can open that up to a lot of different organizations that may not typically work with the DoD. So this is Captain Sean Heritage. Again, he's our acting managing partner out in our Silicon Valley office. We call it the mothership. And yeah, so I think the way this will go is this will just be kind of a conversation, talk a bit about through how we do our business model, how we've worked with companies before, and then really focus specifically on the artificial intelligence project that we're doing out at Fort Hood for the Bradley Fighting Vehicle Office. And so certainly, questions we can answer them, and I think we'll just kind of have a conversation. So Sean, over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Zach. My name's Sean Heritage. I've been on the team for about 12 months now, and I'm embarrassed to say that this is the first time I've been to Austin, Texas. Well, it's great to be here. So is everybody here currently working and or living in the Austin area? Anybody come from? I bet one gentleman who flew in special for this. Huntsville. So sorry to disappoint tonight. But anyhow, this is the first time that I've been to Texas, and Zach's been trying to get me down here for quite some time. Been reading about it, most recently reading about what Army Futures Command has been doing, has chosen to do, will be doing, and there's just too much excitement down here for me not to get on a plane and come down and learn more. And seeing the number of people here in this audience is really remarkable. We know it's really just for the barbecue and the drinks. So we're surprised you actually stayed to listen to us talk.
That's why I'm here.
But we thank you for that, because this is all about engagement. That's a large part of what the Defense Innovation Unit does. And you'll hear Zach and I say the Defense Innovation Unit repeatedly today, and we will struggle to not say experimental, and we will not refer to ourselves as DIUX. But I think it's important for us to point out and acknowledge that the Secretary of Defense has recently dropped the X from our name on purpose, because he believes that he wants to send a message that we are an enduring part of the DoD ecosystem. So those of you who have been paying attention for a while may remember that when we originated, we were a direct report to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. We report to the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering. Some have framed that as a demotion. Those of you who work in the innovation space know that when you no longer need the top cover of the most senior leaders, that's actually a promotion when you are nested within the rightful portion of the larger team. So we are there alongside SCO, Strategic Capabilities Office, and DARPA, the Defense Innovation Board, and MD5, also nested nicely within the R&E team. So for any of you who might be thinking that, wow, DIUX, you've had this interim leader for 6 months now. You have been demoted. You have a new leader in the Undersecretariat. Nothing could be further from the truth. So we do expect to have a new managing partner or a director announced on or about 10 September. So that's also really exciting as well. Who here feels as though they're familiar with the Defense Innovation Unit model? No, Zach, better. All right, so I think it's important for us to do a level setting at the beginning, because that's really what this is all about. DIU represents opportunity for solution providers across the private sector. So Zach and I will spend some time talking a little bit about our mission, our model, how you guys can benefit from it, and how others of you can partner with us, most specifically any Army Futures Command teammates, because they are a growing partner and a large reason why Zach will hopefully soon not be the only DIU member here in Austin. So I think it's important to acknowledge what DIU does. So DIU accelerates commercial innovation for national defense. So there are three things that we do. Largely, we field capabilities to solve problems better, faster, and cheaper, leveraging commercial technology. We create tailored solutions, leveraging commercial technology to solve problems using our organic expertise. And we also coach others on commercial methodologies across the Department of Defense. So we acknowledge that our team of 75, approximately 75, in 4 locations, Silicon Valley, Boston, the Pentagon, and here in Austin, we believe that our model needs to scale across the department. That we're not going to grow in size, so we better grow through partnership. So that's why our coaching line of effort is growing in importance. So back to the fielding capability, leveraging commercial technology. That's been the lion's share of what we have done to date. Zach, you mentioned 75, roughly, projects we've done over the last 2+ years. So we recognize that there are many organizations across the department that are solving problems. We are not alone. So for us to take on a problem, it has to have 3 characteristics. First, it must leverage commercial technology, first and foremost. So mature technology. Unlike DARPA and SCO, which each have their place, we are focused strictly on mature technology, TRL 789, if you will. That we have to be able to see a path towards transition within 24 months. If it's not a problem that we can partner with the private company on to solve a problem within 24 months, it's not a problem for DIU to help solve. And thirdly, the problem must be shared by more than one customer. So we acknowledge that it starts with somebody going first. Somebody has to go first and say, we have a problem, we have money, we have senior leader investment in seeing it through and transitioning it, but we know that, that others have the problem or must have that same problem or a similar problem and benefit from the capability that we're delivering. So 3 things that must happen: commercial technology, 24 months or less, and more than one customer. Because we are not in the prototype business, we are in the scaling business. So we expect that we will be successful in our prototypes, and we recognize that those of you who choose to do business with us aren't interested in doing prototypes. You're interested in the payoff, that is transition and scaling across the largest customer in the world. Zach, if you could compliment that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about problems. I have many problems. Just ask my wife. This obviously was the result of some problems. We are here to solve. Thank you. To solve problems, and I think we don't always pay enough attention, not just in DIU, but in the world in general, as to what problem are we trying to solve. So again, since we're talking about AI tonight, if I had $1 for every time a DoD customer, a partner of ours, said, "Well, I need AI to," okay, let me stop you right there, right? Okay, so if you can't prescribe solutions to problems, and it's something that's often overlooked, and I tend to do it as well, right? So like, convincing my wife, well, I obviously need a new car to go to work because that's a good solution to a problem. I somehow got that one worked out, but I don't know. That's by exception. So a big part of what we do is figure out what is the problem that's trying to be solved. And certainly for this situation, vehicles break down, aircraft break down, unscheduled maintenance is a fortune. Billions and billions of dollars in lost, not only time, but also services and equipment. Vehicles break down, but the Department of Defense also has reams of data, of structured and unstructured data, maintenance logs, part orders that oftentimes span back 30-something years. And unlike in the commercial aircraft world, where you're dealing with contract pilots and contract maintenance and pilot unions and and rental of aircraft, and you don't have a complete picture of data, for your problem. The DoD, we have all that. We own all that. We just maybe don't always do something with it. And so for us, when you think, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Instead of prescribing solutions, what we'll say is, okay, so you have vehicles that are breaking down. All right, why are they breaking down? Is it because, no, it's not because of bad training. No, it's not because of poor equipment, or maybe it is, and maybe you need a different solution. Maybe the problem is actually that you're having maintenance issues because you don't have the right assessment of when a part is going to break. Okay, how do you figure that out? And again, you just kind of go through this process, and lots of different organizations and entities have different ways to do it. Of course, there's the different canvases, Lean Startup, Discipline Entrepreneurship. There's so many different ones, and many of them are really, it's the same stuff, right? It all starts, though, if you look at the top left corner of all those fancy canvases, it all says, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And so just to reflect on that for a moment, and that's really what we do, is we reach out. We're that bridge between the commercial world, between startups who have phenomenal solutions that are solving problems for companies all across the world, say, what are the problems that they're trying to solve? Does the Department of Defense have the same problems? Oftentimes, they do, right? I mean, we're a $700 billion massive enterprise that has all of the same IT issues and personnel issues and things blowing up. Maybe we have more of those issues than others, but we have a lot of issues that other, again, the Fortune 100 also has. So we try to say, what are those problems that are being solved? How can we maybe bring some of that technology to solve some of those same problems in the DoD? And again, predictive maintenance, AI for predictive maintenance is, I think, a perfect example of that.
So I wasn't counting, but maybe some of you were. How many times have you heard the word problem in the few minutes that we've been on stage? Quite a few. How many times have you heard the word requirement? That was the first time I said it. On purpose. So those of you who aren't used to doing work with the government, you would say, come on, guys, can you say some stuff that's more obvious to me? Those of you that have been working with the government in the past, why aren't these guys talking about requirements? That's what we're used to hearing, and that's what we're used to satisfying. We are very deliberate. We do not work in the requirements world. We know that that is stifling to true creative problem solving. So our model starts with a problem within the department that a committed customer is willing to put some money behind and see through. We take that problem, we curate that alongside them. If it meets the 3 criteria that I articulated earlier, we post it on our website in what's called a commercial solutions opening. Has anybody seen a commercial solutions opening on our website? I see a hand. All right. Has anybody been to www.diux.mil? Okay, we're gonna have to change that. We're gonna have to drop the X, but you get the point. I would encourage you to go there and subscribe to our feed so that you can get our CSOs and be more aware of the opportunities that we are presenting to you to help solve these problems. We try to make it as simple as possible to give people reason to want to do business with us. So a response to a CSO is nothing more than an existing slide deck that you might have, a very, very short white paper that would whet our appetite and give us reason to be interested in learning more about you guys. We then down select based on whatever you provide, and much like a Shark Tank, we invite people in to our office in Silicon Valley, or we do it via remote, and we sit side by side with the customer, and we choose, or they choose, we make recommendations, the customer chooses who we might want to do a prototype with. 1, 2, 3, et cetera. I don't remember with this specific project how many CSO responses there were, but I do believe that we chose to bring in 5 companies to come hear their pitches, and we ended up doing work with 2 of them. So again, we're going out of our way, trying to listen to folks like many of you to figure out what would make it easiest to give you reason to want to do work with us. So whether it's just the opportunity to do a proposal or it's the opportunity to execute a contract. Zach has a wonderful story about the project that he leads. One of the projects that he leads actually was the fastest project that we were able to bring to contract. So this is an anomaly, but it begins to illustrate the art of the possible. So Zach, could you share your amazing story with Project Voltron?
I would love to. So we're in a room called Voltron, which I cannot take credit for, but I do have a project called Voltron. And again, it goes back to the problem that's trying to be solved. And what you're still probably thinking is, this sounds good. You're talking about problems. You're talking about solutions, but how does a startup play? Like, how does a startup get its name in, and how does a startup help define what the solutions may be? And so first, in the case of predictive maintenance, like I mentioned earlier, we had a problem. So we knew that these vehicles were breaking down, aircraft, other vehicles. The key part that's kind of behind the curtain is when you go to the military customers and say, okay, we now know that you have a problem, and we've done some research, and we believe that, you look at the Fortune 100 companies, major airlines, major aircraft manufacturers, they're using artificial intelligence for predictive maintenance. So you guys aren't. You have stacks of maintenance logs. Maybe there's a correlation here, but you're going to have to contribute, right? So you're going to have to pay up, right? There's 70 of us across the entire organization, not to scale. There's one in Austin. You know, as we all know, one in Texas is equivalent to about 25 anywhere else. So we. But projects wouldn't be successful if we ran them for someone, right? I mean, the best way to get someone to fix a problem is to have them fix it themselves, and we know that, right? I trust me, I will never be an expert in predictive maintenance, but someone that's actually turning the cranks on a Bradley, that's the Bradley finding vehicle that's looking at maintenance logs, they are the experts. They just need to have the tools. They need to be empowered with the right tools to fix them. So we went back to the organizations and said, you'll have to pay up, you'll have to fund this. This is roughly what we think it'll cost. And we did. We had the Air Force that offered up a platform looking for solutions. Eventually, we had PM, the project management for the Bradley Finding Vehicle, also offer up funding. And that's when we knew that we would be ready to launch. And so, as Sean said, and this is true. If you go on DIOX.mil, I don't think you'll see anything now, but whenever we have a problem that we've curated, which we call it curation, and we decide that there is a way to solve the problem, we'll post it on our website. But for those of you that are familiar with the government, they're used to requirements. Sorry, I like twitch whenever I say the word requirements. We only post things that we have. Oh, hey, people. We only post things that we have that are funded. And so sometimes we'll say, well, that was only up for a week, or that was only up for 2 weeks. That is exactly the point. We don't want to leave something up for 6 months and have people just languish, and a startup will post and then they'll get acquired or they'll go out of business, right? We want you to know that if you see a solicitation, it's real, it's funded, we're ready to go, and we're ready to work on commercial terms, because you probably think that the government is a black hole. It doesn't have to be if you do things in a more disciplined approach. So as Sean was saying, for my project as Voltron, I had a single sentence, actually. Someone wrote an article about it, which I thought, it's just kind of cool. Someone said, we can't believe that the DoD said that they needed something in one sentence, which, again, it doesn't have to be that hard, but we knew that if we wrote it that way, the right companies would find us and they would respond, and in that situation we did. So for predictive maintenance, again, the statement, I don't think it was one sentence, but it certainly wasn't much longer than that. And it basically said that we need solutions that, and I don't think it prescribed AI, again, because that's the solution, but it prescribed ways to get inferences from structured and unstructured data going over a period of time. We had 16 companies respond to that solicitation, which Sean said we picked 5 out of that to then pitch. And of course, that's not just saying these look good. It's doing a bit of market research. It's looking at history of funding, what kind of revenue do you have? Are you pre-revenue? The same kind of commercial standards that would be applied to you if you were going to a venture capitalist, say, to ask for some kind of funding, except we will never take equity. So we had 5 pitch, and then out of that we had 2 that we decided to move forward with, 1 for the Air Force and 1 for the Army. And again, it's very real. And specifically for the Bradley one, it was a $1 million initial contract. But again, for those of you that are in the government that know, contracting, I have to become, if you know what DCAA means, I'm sorry, but become compliant and certify how we handle nuclear waste and just crazy stuff. No, we don't do that because you don't have time for that. Startups are busy trying to kill it in the private sector to certify what they're doing with the nuclear waste. So we operate at commercial terms, and we move quickly. So my project just happened to be lucky. Maybe it was the one sentence solicitation. We were able to get, maybe it was me, maybe it was Texas, I don't know. But we got a $5 million contract awarded 9 business days after we sent the initial solicitation. Glad you guys are all sitting down. But again, that shouldn't have to be such an aberration. I know for this project with the Bradleys, it took I think a couple of months, because sometimes you do have to negotiate the terms. We want to be extremely respectful of IP. Oftentimes with the government, you work for us, therefore we own you. Thank you, congratulations, you're part of the machine. That is not what we do, because that's not how we've seen, right? That's not how success works. I was trying to think of an example of this. It's almost like for my student loans, if my school owned part of me, I might make better decisions, but that's certainly not something that I think most people would subscribe for. A startup does not want to be necessarily a defense contractor. They don't want their IP owned by the government. Many of the things, the iPhone that's in my pocket, or the Apple Watch that I dropped today is now 1,000 pieces. A lot of that is based on technology that the government has funded. Of course, DARPA has done phenomenal things, anything from the internet to almost any kind of tech that you can imagine. And we don't go back to Apple and say, give us a cut of that. Oh, we probably should. I think they're a bigger market cap than the DoD. But we want to help companies get early success. We want them to look at the Department of Defense as an early good customer through our method, offering non-dilutive capital to help fund prototypes. We're buying something. We prove it out. We'll assume that risk that a venture capitalist may or may not, and we'll prove it for you. We'll say the DoD has given you our stamp of approval at $600, $700 billion, maybe 800 by the time this talk's over. Who knows? It always goes up. Massive organization has said your tech works, and then you're off to the races, and then you can go. And some of the biggest success stories for us is when we've done a prototype with a company, and then they've used that success to then go off and raise a massive Series A. I mean, that could not be a better story than for us. And so in the case of the situation, I think the company we worked with is at Series C. But again, it was a roughly 2-month process, $1 million contract, see if the tech works. Again, it might not, right? This has never been done before. The Bradleys were not made with AI in mind. We have these many, many years of pristine structured and unstructured data. It's definitely something that we may find out just doesn't work that well. Of course, we don't try to make that happen, right? We set conditions such that we think it'll work, but that's really the key of what we do. If it doesn't work for some reason, we've shown that we tried the best we can, and it was a good effort, but for whatever reason, we'll have a lot of lessons learned. If it does work, that is the part that's crazy. We estimate predictive maintenance, if it worked across the department, would save about $15 billion a year. Don't know where we came up with that number, but I like it. Someone did the numbers, not just make it up. But again, $1 million investment to prove that we could possibly save $15 billion. I mean, we would be remiss to not try something like that. And I hate to say it, again, I understand the audience, but for the Department of Defense, $1 million, that's not a massive risk, right? It is. It may be to a venture capital. It certainly would be to an angel investor. But for the DoD, let us assume that risk. Let us try out your technology and see if it works for the greater good. Any thoughts on that, Sean?
So any AI experts out there? I see a couple hands. Well, one reluctantly there. So you guys are probably thinking, wow, I thought they were going to talk about AI. So sorry to disappoint, but not really. The point of this conversation really is to help people understand, our business model, the value that we are able to partner with others to deliver across the department, the fact that Army Futures Command is here and will be growing in presence, and our partnership with them will continue to strengthen as we inform each other, and the fact that we are already doing work to help solve the Army's problems. Problems that originated or were voiced by customers at Fort Hood, right? So we may not be all that invested in the local ecosystem here with one Zach Walker, although Zach points out he's worth 25 of other teammates. But the fact is we are doing work here with customers and with companies. And we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of how you could potentially take advantage of opportunities to contribute. And if those of you who might wear a uniform, either as a reservist or as an active duty member or as a civilian working for the department in some way, shape, or form, that you could tap into all of this as well. I also want to foot stomp on the AI project specifically that we're highlighting with predictive maintenance. The Air Force chose to go first, right? We knew that we were going to be solving a problem that others had. as Zach pointed out, problems that commercial world has already acknowledged and has solved. So we weren't able to work with the first platform of choice within the Air Force. We worked with the first platform that was willing to share the data, and that was AWACS. So I remember briefing General Selva on that very topic. He goes, why'd you guys pick the AWACS? Because they were interested customers. They wanted to solve a problem. We proved that we could solve it, and others have gained interest. And it was the socialization of the fact that we were doing work with the Air Force that gave the Army reason to want to solve the problem. And now we are in negotiations with the Navy as well to do a shipboard version of this project. So again, scaling matters. It's not solving a problem for one organization or one service. It's solving problems across the department.
So I only partially joke about being worth 25. Everything is bigger in Texas, but when I say I'm like 25, I'm really about worth 70 people, because the way we operate as an organization, no, not me personally, but when you talk to someone from DIU, right, they represent the entire organization. And I'm not the Texas guy. I'm in Texas just because I know where the best city in the world is, but I represent the entire nation. So my projects, the companies are in Pittsburgh and New York City and the DC area. Mine's more artificial intelligence for cyber warfare. Unfortunately, that is not currently in Austin, Texas. Maybe someone out here can change that. But we operate as a nationwide entity. And so when I say that we've moved $250 million-ish of non-dilutive capital to startups, I mean, that's all of us as a single team. And so the company that's doing the PM Bradley work, the project managers are in Mountain View, and the company is from Chicago, and they're doing the work at Fort Hood. And so that, in no way is that a limitation. If we had an Austin company working with the Navy in California, I mean, that would be just as well. We would never, ever limit a company or a DoD customer by saying you're in the wrong location or you have the wrong focus. In many ways, that's the beauty of our model, is that we can work across all the services to say, again, you can imagine if, as we've discussed tonight, if the Air Force is having a problem with unscheduled maintenance, it's probably pretty close to what the Army is doing and has issues in unscheduled maintenance. And in fact, I've been reading, the DoD may be moving to the cloud someday, I've told. And that same challenge, that crosses the entire DoD, right? And so any solution that would be just for the Navy, just for the Army, just for the Air Force, there's a very good chance that you would get those kind of economies of scale if you were to prototype it out and try it across the DoD. And so that, I think it's important, especially with Army Futures Command, which is such a huge win for the state of Texas and in many ways for the nation, the biggest reorganization since 1973, I think. I remember it well. It was -10. Biggest Army reorganization in 45 years. What it means is that, in many ways, Austin, Texas has really become a focus of defense innovation. But it also means that the companies in Austin, particularly with regard to some of the same technology focus areas that we look in, artificial intelligence, information technology, human systems, autonomy, new space, there's going to be a lot more attention paid to what is happening around Austin, Texas. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk a bit more about our business model and about just what it means of when you can go from a problem that is, again, unscheduled maintenance in a vehicle, how we go through to look at the process, curate it, try to apply a commercial approach, and get the best companies in the world that can do it. Again, we post on DIUX.mil, so whether you're in the Bay Area or Beijing, like, you can see it. No secrets here, because we want the best. And we have worked with companies that are foreign, but of course that's certainly not, that's usually by exception, but showing that there is room for startups and other companies that are probably in this room. And even if they're traditionals, of course, I see IBM over there. We have some great projects with large Fortune 100 companies as well. So it's not just startups, but making sure that people know that it is real. That when we say we went from problem to solution, we moved millions of dollars to a startup, it just sounds very hard to wrap your mind around. And so we wanted to talk a bit more about how we kind of go from start to finish. I do actually have I talked to our project managers, have some advice for AI startups that are in this space that want to work with the government. But certainly before I go into any specifics, I was curious if you have any other things you wanted to add about how we work our magic.
Sure. So I will foot stomp what Zach said about traditional DIB members, Defense Industrial Base. We are not adversaries. We are teammates. Yes, we were set up to help grow the National Security Innovation Base, but we are very proud of the partnerships we have with traditional big companies that are doing work with the department. So please make no mistake about it. It's not an us versus them kind of thing. In fact, it's been a pleasure to watch some of the non-traditionals partner with the traditionals to solve problems. So again, our focus is to solve problems. A nice side effect is growing the number of companies who feel as though they are part of the National Security Innovation Base. I think we did a fair overview of the field line of effort, and we'll be happy to answer questions either from the stage or afterwards on those. But I did want to take a couple minutes to talk about our CREATE line of effort and our COACH line of effort. So our CREATE line of effort wasn't why we were created. Our CREATE line of effort was a result of having some incredible talent on our team and a great deal of passion within it. And what I'm referring to is a team within our team that has spawned called Rogue Squadron. And our Rogue Squadron is focused on the UAS problem, both the UAS and the counter-UAS. So any of the UAS folks out here?
What's a UAS?
Oh, unmanned,
It's a drone.
it's a drone. So more specifically, the small group drone, so 20 pounds or less. So we had a small group that has focused on the security challenges of the premier small group drone manufacturer in the world, not U.S. company. It's DJI. I'm sorry. Not a U.S. company. So our team has worked hard to help harden the tools that many of our folks are using forward. In fact, we're very proud of the fact that though there was a commercial drone ban within the department, because of the vulnerabilities that were highlighted, the way to earn a waiver through that is to work with DIU and use the applications that our team built. So that's our CREATE line of effort. Our COACH line of effort, is scaling our model. We have two programs going on right now, a hacker program and a scaler program. Our hacker program, creatively spelled capital H-A-C-Q, lowercase E-R, acquisition hacking. We have 4 members from across the department that we picked from a pool of 41 to spend 4 months with us to learn how we do our contracting and acquisition side of our model. Goal is for them to go back and help things scale, right? We don't want to be the only organization doing things the way that we do them right now. It needs to scale. The Scaler program is our commitment to creating another organization in our image every 6 months. We chose the F-22 SPO to be the first partner, and they have 6 members of their team visiting us for 4 months to not only learn how we do the acquisition piece, but how we do the problem curation, et cetera. So I think it's important. We were set up to do the field line of effort, but we've learned that the CREATE and COACH line of efforts are equally important if we're truly going to affect the culture change across the department and help our model scale.
So what that means for all of you is that if we're successful, we are not going to be the only organization that does things like this. Because I think for those that are involved in government contracting, what I've been saying in many ways sounds like heresy, and that's the exact point. But the fact that we've been able to show such success, leveraging, I think we've said about $4 billion in investment in the companies we worked with, if we really can continue to show that we can solve or work towards solving some of the nation's most intractable problems, this is something that will start to spread across the department. The old ways of doing business will still remain, right? You can't, at least for now, can't get an F-35 by going to startups, although who knows, some good startups out there. So the major programs will always be around, but the fact that applying commercial technology that's being used across the world to fix military problems quickly, that's something that we think is only going to be a growth industry. And for those of you that are familiar with the terminology and the jargon, our magic is something called OTAs, Other Transaction Authority. It's part of law, Title 10 U.S. Code, paragraph 2371B. Kind of wish I didn't know that, but I do. But it's really a phenomenal power, superpower, that Congress has authorized to be able to do these kind of prototypes to solve challenging problems. And the big secret let you in on a big secret of all this. With Army Futures Command in town, all of our contracting is done by the Army. So the Army is already the ones doing all of this as it is, right? So the future is now, literally, with Army Futures and them doing this kind of work. I really just wanted to say the future is now, to be honest. Oh yeah, tips for AI startups. They're like, God, it took you 35 minutes to get to this. So we talked to the program managers out in Silicon Valley because they saw the 16 companies pitch. They helped pick the 5 that got the awards, and they've seen everything, I think, at this point. Some of the advice that they offered, and again, I hope that this is not going to be too much of a surprise to you, but if you want to have a product that solves the military's problems, solve commercial problems, and military problems will follow. So if you were thinking, I'll just make a company and it will be a defense contractor and it will just solve defense problems, maybe, but if you can solve commercial problems, again, if you can figure out how to, the full spectrum of artificial intelligence, from structured knowledge to pick your buzzword, right? Computer vision, structured data, unstructured data. If you can solve these problems in the commercial world, then you will necessarily be very valuable to what we are trying to do. Specifically, something that came up a couple times in our conversations with them was, actually, I can't claim this quote, but go ahead, I will, if anyone's writing it down. The military doesn't have enough fighter pilots. There is no way we have enough data scientists, right? So if you're making a product that you need to be a data scientist to use, it's probably not going to work that well for the almost non-existent pool of data scientists that we have. Now, we're working on it. The DoD is setting up something called the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, which unfortunately is not going to be in Austin. I tried, but it's going to be at the Pentagon. So we're working on it. Again, we sometimes are a little slow, but the data scientists, we're moving in that direction, but at the end of the day, either having a user interface that can be usable, partnering with companies that are really good at that, making it to where someone that's dumb like me can use it and leverage it, that is going to be something that, one, gives you great commercial success, makes it more attractive to government customers, and most importantly, will help you get that revenue from the commercial sector that you can then use to grow and build your company. And I know it sounds kind of dumb, like obviously I would focus on user interface. If any of you have ever used software in the military, you know that they do not focus on user interface. And so just please, for the love of God, make tools that work and that people can use. And truly, I think you'll be really surprised at the kind of results that you'll get. So that's my free tips to AI startups.
All right. I will point out that the first meeting that Zach and I had this morning was at the Chamber of Commerce. And I left there really with a strong appreciation for the ecosystem that Army Futures Command has recently plugged into, and Zach and all of you have plugged into. We are part of an ecosystem, whether that's geographical here in Austin, or it's in just this problem space. Do I have any AFWorks teammates here? All right, AFWorks, Army Futures Command. All right, I don't know who else I should ask for and expect to get a hand up, but I think we need to deliberately share the fact that we are just part of the ecosystem. We don't want to give anybody the impression that we are any better than any other organization that's contributing to this area. In fact, we've taken on a project with the Defense Innovation Board trying to map and bring together some convergence across the growing number of organizations across the Department of Defense that consider themselves innovative. At last count, there's 70. So that's not a bad thing, but the necessary thing is for us to work together. So it's great that AFWorks is here, that Army Futures Command is here, and I want all of you to know who don't get to see the behind-the-scenes workings, that many of us do in fact work together. We do not attempt to confuse you all, and that we do share information. So when you share your great technologies, we tend to share awareness of those. It may not fit our model, but it may fit another organization's model who's equally committed to solving problems.
And we all use the same acronyms because the key to our heart is through acronyms. That's very true, if you don't know. So it's gotten, been up here for a while. It's like 1,000 degrees in these lights. I will be curious to find out if anyone has any questions for us about either our business model, or some things that we've done or haven't done, or even just any pro tips. And I think Sean is going to throw the box because I'm a little. Well, if you want to throw,
totally
just
fine.
I don't want you to get sued.
There's one direction on here that says don't throw at anybody's head, so hopefully we can do that. I saw the hand up over here first, so first
right.
question. Here you go.
Hey, thanks. Eric Ricard with Booz Allen. One of the questions I get asked about DIUX is what's in it for them? So, you gave the example of, rapid contracting, $1 million saved many billions of dollars. How did it turn out for the company? How did they do?
The startups and companies that would get our work?
Yeah, so after the $1 million, what happened for them?
Well, I know a few examples, and I can say those, and I think they're all public knowledge. If not, oh well, here we go. So there's a company in San Diego called Shield AI. They make autonomous drones. We did a contract with them, a prototype project, to work for a DoD customer, and we determined that was a successful prototype. It did what it's supposed to do. It worked well. We think it could save lives. We assumed that risk. We proved it out in some austere environments and said, yeah, this is great. They leveraged that directly into what I believe to be a $16 million Series A from Andreessen Horowitz. And my understanding is that we were part of the diligence calls to say, hey guys, was this real? Yeah, we checked it out. Okay, cool. And that Series A is bigger than what it had. I'll give you another example from one of my companies, from Voltron. They were a small company. They had won a massive contest from DARPA. They'd only had about $1 million in revenue, 11 employees. Getting a $5 million non-dilutive, equity-free contract from the government, if you can imagine what that does to an evaluation. Many times with venture capital, the downside is that they own you, right? They dilute you and they take part of the company. And that's not always a bad thing, but certainly for founders that want to retain control, to be able to almost get a Series A from the DoD and all we ask in return is that you deliver, that's pretty transformative for some of these companies. Now, it's not just the tiny startups as well. Again, we worked with the traditional defense players and in either partnerships with startups, because when you think about it, many startups don't want to be startups forever. They want to have an exit. They want to sell. And many of the traditional defense players also want to be more agile and more effective. And so if we can help set up that relationship where a startup can partner with a big defense player, traditional, and I know your company is one of them, I mean, what a beautifully symbiotic relationship if we can help set those conditions so that both sides can, one, at the end of the day, save the government money, deliver an amazing service, and share best practices and work together a bit better. I don't know, Sean, if you have any other good examples.
In addition to that, we look for metrics as to, are we doing our part? So we like to look at two things, many things, but I'll highlight two right now. The number of problems that are coming our way from within the department, and that continues to increase. In fact, we've got to the point where we have to say no to some rather impactful problems that we'd like to help solve, and that's rather unfortunate. But also, and I think more to your question, is the number of non-traditionals, especially, that choose to submit in response to our CSOs. So our record to date is 77 for a single CSO, which was a lot of work to hear a lot of pitches, and our average is in the mid-30s. So it continues to increase. So we evidently, we're giving people more reason to want to work with us, as measured by those two things as well.
Hey, great answers. Thank you. Just want to ask, you mentioned, Zach, the notion of build your business first in commercial. My ask is, defense allow them to use that as past performance? Because today you always have to have government past performance instead of commercial past performance.
So, again, for those that don't know, I apologize for dropping yet more acronyms on you, but we are not, what we do is not governed under the federal acquisition regulations, right? So, do you have a great product, killing in the private sector? Cool, let's try it. That's kind of our process.
Cool. Saw another hand up over here.
Is it working? Okay. Welcome to Texas. Great job on picking the socks. JP Lutz from IBM. You mentioned a little bit about the transition to programs of record. Can you guys talk a bit about that? About how you can help transition into something larger?
So I think the most visible example is that of the Kessel Run project that we've done. Has anybody outside of Star Wars fans, have anybody heard of the Kessel Run project? All right, Kessel Run project, I won't go deep into how it originated, but it's a great example of a problem that came our way that started really small. We built applications with a company called Pivotal and some airmen, very passionate airmen, working tangentially with the KAOC in Al Udeid. And they created these applications. They worked. We created more applications. It worked. They loved what Pivotal was doing with them. The Air Force chose to make it a production contract across the Air Force, so anybody in the Air Force can now purchase Pivotal services and do software co-development. And now the program office owns Kessel Run and all of its activities wholeheartedly together. We are not involved at all, and Kessel Run endures. I don't know that that was the intent from the beginning, but it's definitely where we ended up. Another example that we're at the beginning of that is deliberate partnership is a project that we're doing with PEO Aviation on the Army side on the short-range reconnaissance, trying to stimulate U.S. investment in small group drone and create a market there. So there's many reasons why we took on that project, but the most significant one is the fact that we are partnering with the program office from the get-go. And then I also mentioned the first scaler we chose was F-22, and that was on purpose as well. So I think your question is spot on, that our relationship and partnership with the program offices is critical. Otherwise, we just create more rubbish in the valley of death, right?
Hey, just a heads up, the next person to speak gets to throw it to the next person. I realized me being here is not necessary, so I'm going to throw it back there, and then you guys take it from there.
You're just a speaker box consultant.
I'm off duty now. Howdy, I've got like 2 or 3 quick questions on how, if you don't mind. One is, who reps the customer in the phase 2 pitch? You said that the customer is actually making the choice in the phase 2 pitch. So who typically from the agency or the contracting authority or whatever it is, or the
The beauty is that it varies, right? So for mine is AI for cyber. So I got people from the people that would actually be using the tool that have done this stuff for 15 years that knew it. It just depends. I don't know who was there for the predictive maintenance one, but I can assure you that we did the best diligence we could to get the people that know AI and predictive maintenance and can see through the marketing, but also people that understand, like, yeah, we think this could work for our project. So I had a team of about 25 people from across the entire nation that did my pitches. So people in person, people dialing in, and then we chatted about it.
So there's expertise from across the board, but there's somebody from the customer that is there on behalf of the principal of that organization that can make the decision. So we facilitate their decision, and they are represented by somebody who's empowered to actually make the call.
Fair enough. Do you run into any issues with national defense, national security information with some of your non-traditional non-traditional contractors? Because you're in such a rapid cycle, I mean, how do you get clearance, or does that not become an issue? Has it not become an issue yet?
So I will tell you that all the problems that we take on are unclassified. On the due diligence side, about looking deep into the companies before we choose to do business with them, that is an area for improvement. In fact, yesterday our leadership team was with In-Q-Tel and their leadership team talking about that very subject, about how we can leverage their amazing capability on the due diligence side to work together. So that's an area that we're looking to improve, but by no means are we doing anything that's irresponsible.
But we do, it depends on the situation. The customer will sponsor clearances if necessary and cleared space and that kind of stuff. But something else that's kind of on the other end of that, if you're buying commercial technology and commercial products, in many ways, for the government, we abstract ourselves from much of that perceived risk, right? Because if you're selling to the Fortune 100 and you're making a lot of money and you have a small contract with us, it's really not in your best interest to mess with us because we'll figure it out and it'll end very badly for you. And so in many ways, we just want the same commercial licenses or the same commercial product that you're already selling to other places. And so in a sense, it abstracts us a bit from any of that perceived risk of infiltration.
And if you could indulge me just one more, the how-to paper, the 90-some-odd pager, says that agencies are required to use their own bid protest rules or fashion appropriate bid protest rules for the context of this particular agreement or proposal? Have you guys run into any issues? Has anybody actually protested or complained?
You want to take that one, Sean?
Well, I will not answer. I won't answer the question in depth here. I will just refer to a very visible experience that we had with a company called Oracle, and I'll leave it at that.
It's on the Googles.
Yeah, I'll talk to you offline as well.
Nice catch.
So quick question in terms of like, so actually getting that requirement, or I guess not requirement, but getting the ask from the warfighter. So what does that process actually look like? Is it, I'm sure it's not, that Bradley mechanic at Fort Hood. Does it go up through the chain of command and you get it from some sort of, what level of command are you getting those requests from? And how does those requests actually filter up the chain?
Fortunately, there's no one specific way, which I think has also been great for our ability to be nimble and formerly experimental, no longer. But to go back to JP's, the conversation there is working with the program office. So in the government, the program offices, they own the Bradleys or they own the F-22, and they're responsible for the care and feeding of these things. And they're the ones that are closest to understanding the programmatic challenges. And so our best projects have worked hand in hand with the program offices to say, what are some of these pain points, right? If you're familiar with like the Challenger sales model, what problem do they maybe not realize they even had until we started talking to them, and then working it through that way. So specifically in this case, it was the Bradley program office, which is in like Michigan. So I don't know, I made that face. It just isn't Texas. In Michigan, and then but they don't have the Bradleys in a motor pool, so they found with a unit in Fort Hood called 27 Cav. And they were the ones that were going to be on the ground prototyping it out. So I feel like 90% of our success is being able to make those connections, trying to understand the problem, getting people in the room to talk. And honestly, something I've done just in my projects, these people don't necessarily talk, right? It's not that often that you would get the Bradley program office and someone that's on the ground at Fort Hood in the same room to talk about how this kind of stuff would work. And we also offer that as an ability and a mechanism to really tease out what needs to be done. So there's really no one way. It's come all the way from the SecDef saying, do this, and we say, okay, to program offices saying we have a problem with vehicles breaking down. And then sometimes it's especially for disruptive technologies, not loud, but in the Clay Christensen kind of disruption, where it just comes out of nowhere like an iPhone and then it makes everyone else obsolete. For those kind of technologies, many times they will come on the scene and will say, oh, wow, this has just disrupted a massive industry. We would never write a requirement for that, right? You can't disrupt yourself in many ways. How do we get that kind of disruptive technology, seeing the problems that it's fixing, making sure we have the same problems, and going through that way? And honestly, in many ways, artificial intelligence is that kind of disruptive technology, because in many ways, again, it's a capability that never existed before, in the sense of being able to scale such that you can look at maintenance logs now and get inferences on which parts are going to break. So in many ways, this project was an example of prototyping out disruptive technology that again, we would have never known to write a requirement for when they made the Bradleys in the 80s or 90s.
In addition to that, more than half of our team is from our warfighters, right? And we come to the team passionate about problems that we had to experience firsthand. And sometimes we'll go back to a sponsor, try to pitch that problem and convince him or her that it's a problem worth them sponsoring. So we kind of glossed over that, but our team, though it is approximately 75 in number, it is a blended team of active duty military, reservists, Air National Guard, commercial executives, and government civilians. So it takes all kinds, right? We talk about diversity. There's great diversity of thought there, diversity of experience, and passion about problems that we've had to experience firsthand.
Man down.
Okay, so one of the questions I had about the Bradley tank program was how controlling for the data. So the tanks were deployed in different locations, mainly involving sand, and in the future, they may be deployed in urban locations. So how are y'all controlling for that inference into the future?
Let me tell you. So in the prototype, so first off, it's a prototype, right? So we want to have a controlled environment where we can make sure that the technology works. And the way that they've decided to do it for the Bradleys is again, at Fort Hood, picking initially 5, scaling up to, I think, 32. And what's unique about this approach is that it's a combination of hardware. So they actually have a little box that they're making, they'll plug in to get pristine data off of the data bus that runs on the Bradley. And they mix that with probably decades of structured maintenance logs that have been sitting in databases, not talking to each other for a long time, and combining them together. And first look historically and say, well, this part is rated to last for 1,000 hours, but that's weird because it always goes out after 800, right? That's not something, and then we say, oh, this one went to Iraq and it went out in 700. And so part of it is just looking historically, since the DoD has this data, and that's, I think, for AI startups is what's so remarkable is that the DoD has so much data, just mountains and mountains of data on this. We can go back in historically and figure out what things could have been. And then again, for this project with the Bradleys, combining the historical data with, again, ongoing maintenance data plus data that's being read off of a vehicle, we can then now use all of that together and help refine the model to figure out exactly when. Because it's not just about knowing we'll replace this hose next. It's also about helping the commander make better decisions. So if we had to go across some barren land in Europe, to be able to say, well, based on our model, we think that in this terrain, in this environment, because we tested it at Fort Hood, we tested it out in California, we think that this part would fail after a certain amount of time, so replace it at this time. But you're absolutely right. You have to account for all those different things. But fortunately, since we have just so much of this data already existing, I mean, it's almost like cheating because we had it. It's like you have the answer many times already. And that's what the prototype will see. Again, it's a prototype. We think it would be successful. Obviously, it wouldn't have made it through our diligence process if we didn't, but it's never been done before for this program. And it's something that we'll have to find out as we go and refine. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
While we're waiting on the next one, I want to go back to the problem creation question. And I think that another way that we need to collectively up our game is when we have let's say an MD5 hackathon or an AFWorks competition or Fathom 5 sponsoring a hackathon of their own, the output of that resulting in some type of DIU-oriented project. Not all of them will, but for me, and we met with one company this morning or this afternoon that won one of MD5's hackathon, being able to hear the value of them winning in their mind for their business model was great, but I couldn't help but feel like we fell short in not being able to do any true business with the company that won that hackathon. So back to my comment about connective tissue between all these innovative organizations and these very complementary models out there. I don't know how deliberate the fact that they're complementary was, or if it's just happenstance, but neither here nor there. We're committed to doing a better job where outputs from other great models could be inputs to ours and vice versa.
That's a great point. And if it's okay, this will be the last question to keep us at an hour so people don't fall asleep.
Can you say what the largest contract you let was? And follow-on question to that is, can you give one or two examples of how a startup or a team solution actually found its way to the acquisition and was procured by the DoD?
I don't know. Yeah, start with that. Yeah. So none of our stuff is a secret. I mean, as far as the actual dollar value of the largest project, I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to think of which ones have been the largest. We have several in the over $30 million category. Oftentimes it's software as a service because that scales really well. But I'm not. Yeah, I don't know which one is actually the winner at the time. But for the examples of ones that get picked up, you mentioned Kessel Run, of course, as one. So that was a prototype with Pivotal, which Dell Technologies company, just for you out there in Texas. It was deemed a successful prototype and then went to what's called production. And I believe the internet says the first order on that one was like $47 million by the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, which is the organization that's responsible for this kind of ongoing maintenance. And so that's a perfect example of something that prototype, successful, into production. Not all projects have to go into that kind of sustained, sometimes, usually they do, but that's not all times that has to happen. Sometimes there's a problem that needs to be solved, and the prototype can solve the problem. I have an example of one of my projects is just, can we get a tool that will work on a certain kind of aircraft? And if it works, then that's really solved the problem for that situation. So you don't also, this is actually probably good advice to startups, is you don't have to necessarily think, this is going to go in and be like $1 billion sale, right? We don't actually. We've done contracts that are, I know one in particular, at least $100,000, which I know is a lot to many startups, but not everything has to be these multi-million-dollar massive blowout things. You don't have to be a unicorn to respond to our solicitations. It just depends.
And the first production contract we did was with a company called Tanium. So that was solving an Army problem, but really a shared problem. The Army just went first. So that is now a capability that's available out there for anybody in the department to purchase pre-negotiated rates for those services.
If I may, just quick follow-up. In those examples where actually products were led to acquisition by DoD, was that done, provided those services or goods or products were provided by the startup, or did it require some kind of transition with a traditional contractor as a team member? I'm trying to assess how how open the DoD is to startups providing the solution to DoD as opposed to
so the answer is yes. I mean, in three contracts, I know one is fully startup only, had a product, we said it was successful, it became a multi-million-dollar contract, startup only. The Tanium example was purchased through a reseller, I believe, who sells to the government, so that's a good example of intermediary. And then the Kessel Run is actually in partnership with a major defense industrial player who's out in Boston that works with it. So that's actually, in those three, that's an example of all three, from just startup with reseller, startup in partnership with traditional, so all kinds.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've come to the end of our time.
All right, so we'll be hanging out in case you want to have any sidebars. But thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being such a big part of the Austin innovation ecosystem and the DoD as well. So thank you.
And thanks to Capital Factory for also hosting an awesome chance for us. So thanks again for coming out, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.
It's still live. again.
Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit. Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit.
I got a record, but I'm clean as they come. I'm Godzilla, when they see me, they run. On 37th, used to run from the Bloods. The undercovers got a duck when they come. I moved out and in a couple of months, I'ma be a pop star, they call me a thug. I used to write raps on the back of the bus. Now I'm in the front seat shifting the gears.
It's funny how things can change. $300 to my name led to Hollywood. I was living off ramen and shit. $500 on these dinners, never have to pay. Growing up, my teachers told me, you better get them grades up if you want to finish high school. And after high school, you better get a degree, cause it's a dog-eat-dog world, you can live in the street. Flashback, I had my Walkman in the minivan, listening to NSYNC, saw my name on the CD. Bleach blonde tips, wanted to be JT, wanted to do big things, had to fulfill a dream. One might say I was doomed from the get-go, but those same people assume, cause they'll never know what it's like to be called to what's not set in stone. I am one with the ebb and flow, that's all I know.
Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit. Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit. Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit. Twisting me out like licorice. Think I need someone who can handle it. Ice on my boys and my wrist is fixed. I don't need nobody tryna give me shit.
same type game, the type of girl giving out the fake cell phone, the name. Big fame, she like cats with big things. Jewel ship, money clip, phone flip the 6 range. Has seen her on the ass, spotted her more than once. Ass so fat that you can see her from the front. She spot me like paparazzi, shot me a glance, and that Catwoman stands with the fat booty pants. Hot damn, what's your name, love? Where you came from? Neck and wrist laced up, very little makeup. The swims at the Reebok gym, tone your frame up, a sugar and spice, the only thing that you made up. I tried to play it low key, but couldn't keep it down. Asked her to dance, and she was like, yo, I'm leaving now. An hour later, sounds from Jamaica. She sipping Chris straight up, skanking while in the waist up. Scene 2. My fam throwing the jam for Reed is on the stand. Big things is in the plans. The brother Big Moon makes space for me to move in here. Yo, this my man Most, baby, let me introduce. I turn around. You was the same pretty bird who I had priorly observed, trying to play me for the herb. Shocked to sell, she couldn't get it together. I just played along and pretended I never met her. How you feeling? No, I'm fine. My name is Mons. I'm Sharice. I heard so much good about you. It's nice to finally meet. He moved to the booth, reserved for crew especially, and Honey Love ended up sitting directly next to me. I'm type polite, but now I'm looking at her skeptically. Cause baby girl got all the right weaponry. Designer fabric, shoes and accessories. Chinky eyes, sweet voices, with me mentally. Be conversated, made her laugh, yeah, you know me, bro. Even though I know the stilo, she wild sweet, yo. I'm about to murk, I say peace to the family. She hop up like, how you gonna leave before you dance with me? Dance with me. She blew my whole head with that dude. I was like, what? I played it low though. I was like, yeah, alright, come on then, let's go. This is mad. This is so sick. I'm telling yo, Honey was so blazing. She was just, what? Yo, she looked like Jane Kennedy, word bomb. To my mother, man. She was that L, man. She take me to the dance floor and she start whispering to me. Yo, let me apologize for the other night. I know it wasn't right, but baby, you know what it's like. Some brothers don't be coming right. I understand, I'm feeling you. Besides, can I have a dance? Ain't really that original. We laughed about it, traced the arms across my shoulder blades. They playing lovers rock, I got to fold the fingers on the waist. He in my butt up like the Arizona summer song finished. And she whispered, honey, let's exchange numbers. Scene 3. Weeks of dating, late night conversation in the crib, heart racing, trying to be cool and patient. She touched on my eyelids, the room fell silent. She walked away smiling, singing Gregory Isaacs like, if I don't, have you. She want me a tan line and a tattoo, playing Sade, sweetest taboo, burning candles. All my other plans got canceled. Man, I smashed it like an Idaho potato. She called me at my J.O. Come now, I can't say no. Jensen tree trunks, rocking a P-from, cocking her knees up. Champion lover, not ease up. 3 months, she call, I feel I'm running a fever. 6 months, I'm telling her I desperately need her. 9 months, flu-like symptoms with shorty not around. I need more than to knock it down, I'm really trying to lock it down. Midnight, we hook up and go at it. Burn a slogan, let her know, sweetheart, I got to have it. She telling me commitment is something she can't manage. Wake up the next morning, she gone like it was magic. Oh, damn it. Is on Harrison, full frantic. My number one's an answer by my fly Taurus enchantress. Next week, who hit me up? I saw Sharice at the kitty club with some banging ass Asian playing, lay it down and lick me up. What?
You may not know me, but I know you. And I'm aware how strange that sounds. You see, we cross paths every Thursday at 2. Going to class to make your mama proud. I ain't the type of guy you usually hang around. But baby, I got potential. It's in no time, so let's not waste time. Come and skip class with me. I'll take you to the wrong side of the streets. Take you down to the places your mama calls her. The same places I call home and spend childhood. Where time seems to slow down, until you can feel the earth beneath you going round and round. Now I can see the crazy in your eyes growing brighter with every word that flies from my mouth. And I know this may sound irrational, but you can't go wrong living by the mind. Oh, you can always retake the class. But you can't relive the fire. You can always retake the class.
this or not, click deny or confirm. I know you think I'm just kicking high pros like the rest of them Gastons and Federline Jones, but I ain't got all the time in the free world to be hollering at just any library girl. Struck me like a scat hard drop kick, NWO, the new young hotness. I only make moves on a whim. Let's take this road trip to the middle of Wisconsin, California, even New Orleans. Party till dawn, wake up and watch adults swim. Oh, you were headed to the bookstore, about to drop a couple hundred on textbooks? Ma, we could flip that money twofold. Throw a house party, charge $5 for the Ken cups. You rap on a roll, I rap Delta Chi. You say dope fresh, I say hella fly. Baby, we're isotopes, different nuclei, on the same table, forever living by. Always reach to less, but you can't live the party. Always reach to less, but you can't live the party. Always reach to less, but you can't live the party. You always reach to less, but you know you can't live the party.
Getting the spirit in the dark. I'm getting the spirit in the dark. People moving, oh, we're grooving. Just getting the spirit in the dark. Tell me, sister, how do you feel? Tell me, my brother, how do you feel? If you feel like dancing, get up and let's start dancing. Start getting the spirit. Start getting the spirit in the dark. In the dark. It's like Sally Walker sitting in a saucer. That's how you do it. Ain't nothing to it. Rise, Sally, rise. Put your hands on your hips, cover your eyes and move. With the spirit, with the spirit, and move. Move with the spirit, with the spirit. Oh, move, move with the spirit down there. Now move with the spirit. Are you getting the spirit? Yeah. Are you getting it in the dark? Yeah. I wonder, are you getting the spirit? Getting the spirit in the dark. Yeah. People are moving. Yeah. Everybody's grooving. Just getting the spirit. Start getting the spirit. Are you getting it in the dark? In the dark. It's like Sally Walker sitting in her saucer. That's how you do it. Now get on up to it. Rise, Sally, rise. Put your hands on your hips, cover your eyes and move with the spirit. With the spirit. Oh, move with the spirit. With the spirit. Move with the spirit. With the spirit. Now move with the spirit. I think I got it. All of my brothers with the spirit. All of my sisters with the spirit. Move with the spirit. With the spirit. With the spirit. Keep on moving with the spirit. Keep on grooving with the spirit. Move with the spirit. Keep on grooving with the spirit. Get your hands. With the spirit. Let us know your way. Get me free. With the spirit on the beat. Oh, move with the spirit. Move with the spirit. Oh, move with the spirit. Move.
Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. The type of memories that turn your bones to glass. Turn your bones to glass. Mother came rushing in. She said we didn't see a thing. We said we didn't see a thing. And Father left at 8, nearly splintering the gate. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. The type of memories that turn your bones to glass. Turn your bones to glass. And though you were just a little squirrel, you understood every word. And in this way, they gave you clarity, a cold-blooded clarity. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Oh, how can I stand and laugh with the man who redefined your body? How can I stand and laugh with the man who redefined your body? In those cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. Cold-blooded old times. says you're mine. Oh, you're mine. But I get a lot of nothing. Nothing all the time. And we both know about it. And it's weighing on my mind. Time seems to change it. Could we please go back in time? 'Cause I remember smiling faces and beautiful places. I was happy all the time. Smiling faces and beautiful places. Please, please be mine. Smiling faces and beautiful places. I was happy all the time. Smiling faces and beautiful places. Please, please just step aside, step aside. 'Cause you have ruined my pride this time. Smiling faces and beautiful places. I was happy all the time. Smiling faces and beautiful places. Please, please be mine. Smiling faces and beautiful places. I was happy all the time. Smiling faces and beautiful places. Please, please just step aside, step aside. 'Cause you have ruined my pride this time. Step aside, step
My guy pretty like a girl, and he got 5 stories to tell. I see both sides like Chanel, see on both sides like Chanel. Swimming laps through pool water, eating like I'm underworld. Had my tattoos in Shibuya, police think I'm of the underworld. 12 treat a nigga like he 12. How you looking up to me and talking down? Can't you see I am the big man? God level, I am the I am. Now film it with the drone cam in the pink like Killer Cam. Zoom on that stick, no way. Up so close, I'm on that kill. Controller on your lower back, yeah, that's the good. Dick and roll the eyes back in the skull. Rollin' when you ride, poppin'. Rollin' when you ride the ride. Got one, straight acting, turned up like some dirty plastic ride. 2016 burned some discs. 2017 ideas playing off Walgreens. This a cult, not a click on the net. With a cup, in a cup, activist. That's a double edge, it's a knife. And I don't like to fight till I'm fighting. Revenge in the air makes my lungs sick. Chopper in the sky like a gun trick. Clips on clips like Mike. It's really you. I see both sides like Chanel. See on both sides like Chanel. It's really you on my mind. It's really you on my mind. It's really you. It's really you on my mind. Need both sides of the 12. Need both sides of the L. Free smoke rings in they hell. Sleet snow grind for the well. Whole team diamonds is real. Show them how to shine by themselves. You need a cosign for your help. I need that bitch to grind on my belt. I know you need to drive for my belt. I know you seen it drive in itself. No matte black on the ride cause it's stale. But it's stale. I see both sides like Chanel. I see both sides like Chanel. My pocket's snug. They can't hold my 7. They ban my Visa, my Amex and MasterCards. I got new money and it's all cash. I got new bags and they all collapsed. I rubber band a bunch of $1,000 Delta gift cards. I mean my baby boy, amazing the cash on unknown. I mean my baby boy, blazing the dash, count money at home. My pocket's snug, they can't hold my 7. They ban my Visa, my Amex and MasterCards. I got new